Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Welcome to the Southwest Desert, the channel that explores the mysteries and tales of the American Southwest. Today, we're delving into the fascinating story of Jack Stewart and his legendary Ace in the Hole, a lost gold ledge in the heart of Death Valley. Our story begins in Darwin, California, on May 16, 1947. On this day, Jack Stewart, one of the last of the old-time burro prospectors, passed away. With his death, a chapter in the history of Death Valley prospecting came to a close, but not without leaving behind a tantalizing mystery that continues to captivate treasure hunters and history buffs alike. Jack Stewart was no ordinary prospector. He had spent more than half a century chasing rainbows in the Death Valley region, a harsh and unforgiving landscape that has claimed the lives of many less hardy souls. Over the years, Jack had made enough strikes to ensure that when increasing blindness finally barred him from the old trails, he had money in the bank and income from mining claims to keep him comfortable. But there was one ledge upon which Jack had never filed. He called it his Ace in the Hole, and just a few days before he died, he shared the secret of this lost ledge with a friend. This friend, who wished to remain anonymous, later recounted the story, adding another chapter to the lore of lost mines in Death Valley. Before we dive into the tale of the lost ledge, let's take a moment to understand who Jack Stewart was. Jack was more than just a prospector. He was a walking encyclopedia of the desert. He knew the Death Valley region like the back of his hand, not just its minerals and potential riches, but its very essence. Jack could speak at length about the origin of the desert, its flora and fauna, and the boom towns that had sprung up and died away during his time there. He had been present for much of the region's modern history, witnessing firsthand the ebb and flow of fortune seekers and the transformation of the landscape. Despite the harsh life of a desert prospector, Jack was an educated man and a gifted storyteller. Those who knew him described him as a great talker, someone whose words could paint vivid pictures of the desert's past and present. His knowledge wasn't just confined to geology and mining. He had a holistic understanding of the desert ecosystem and its history. In his later years, as his eyesight began to fail, Jack's sharp mind and vivid memories became his most valuable assets. Even when he was nearly blind, his recollections of the desert remained crystal clear, allowing him to guide others to mineral deposits and gem rocks he had discovered decades earlier. Just a week before Jack Stewart passed away, he had a visitor, the friend who would later share this story. This friend, on his way to Nevada to search for some crystals Jack had told him about, stopped by Jack's cabin in Darwin for a chat. Despite his failing health, Jack welcomed his friend warmly. Perhaps sensing that his time was short, Jack decided to share a secret he had kept for years. He told his friend about his Ace in the Hole, a rich gold deposit he had discovered but never filed a claim on. Jack explained that if anything had ever gone wrong for him financially, he could have taken a few pack mules to this secret location and brought out a fortune in just a few days. The fact that he had never needed to use this backup plan speaks volumes about Jack's success as a prospector and his ability to navigate the boom and bust cycles of desert mining. The story of Jack's discovery takes us back to 1897, a time when Death Valley was still a frontier, largely unexplored and full of potential riches. Jack had been prospecting around the northern end of Death Valley, in an area near what is now known as Death Valley Scotty's Castle in Grapevine Canyon. With his supplies running low, Jack decided to head for Olancha, a small town to the west of Death Valley. The usual trail would have taken him down Death Valley to Stovepipe Wells, then up Emigrant Wash and through Town Pass, now known as Townsend Pass. However, as Jack neared Stovepipe Wells, he noticed storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Realizing he couldn't outrun the impending cloudburst, Jack made a crucial decision. Instead of pushing on to Stovepipe Wells, he turned his burrows into a promising-looking wash that led into the Panamint Mountains, the great chain that forms Death Valley's western boundary. As the storm clouds grew more threatening, Jack searched for shelter. He managed to find some high ground protected by cliffs just before the rain began to fall. What followed was a wet and miserable night as the storm developed into a full-blown cloudburst. By daylight, the storm had passed, leaving behind scattered pools of water. Jack, ever the resourceful prospector, took advantage of this unexpected bounty to fill his canteens. This newfound water supply gave him the freedom to explore further into the Panamints instead of returning to the valley floor. As Jack and his burros made their way up the canyon, they encountered a fresh landslide near the canyon's head. The cloudburst had carved a channel through the slide, which Jack and his burros followed. It was here, in this newly exposed cut, that Jack made his extraordinary discovery. Scattered in the bottom of the wash were pieces of quartz, but not just any quartz. These fragments were shot through with gold. Jack, recognizing the significance of his find, collected all the float, loose pieces of ore, he could find. He reasoned that the landslide must have carried the quartz into the wash from its source somewhere above. Despite his excitement, Jack was faced with a dilemma. His food and water supplies were running low, forcing him to continue on to Olancha. He left the canyon with the intention of returning immediately, but as often happens in the world of prospecting, other promising projects arose, delaying his return. It wasn't until 1902, 5 years after his initial discovery, that Jack Stewart finally made his way back to the canyon. He set up camp and began a thorough search for the source of the golden quartz he had found in the wash. During this search, Jack did manage to find a small, rich outcropping of gold ore. However, this wasn't the mother lode he was looking for. It wasn't the source of the golden quartz he had found in the wash 5 years earlier. Once again, with his supplies running low, Jack was forced to break camp and leave the canyon. Remarkably, despite his intention to return, Jack Stewart never made it back to that particular canyon in the Panamints. The life of a prospector is often guided by new strikes and interesting leads, and Jack's was no exception. The need for his ace in the hole never materialized, and the exact location of the rich gold deposit remained his secret. In his last days, Jack Stewart seemed eager to pass on the knowledge of his secret gold ledge. He told his friend, "The stuff is there, and plenty of it." He even proposed a plan to locate the canyon together, offering to split the find 50-50. Jack's confidence in his memory was evident. He told his friend that if he could find some crystals in Nevada based on Jack's directions, it would prove that his recollection of locations was still accurate. The friend did indeed find the crystals exactly where Jack said they would be, lending credibility to Jack's story about the Lost Gold Ledge. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. By the time the friend returned from his successful crystal hunting trip to Nevada, Jack Stewart had passed away. With him died the precise knowledge of where to find his ace in the hole. Today, the exact location of Jack Stewart's lost ledge remains a mystery. We know it must be on the Death Valley side of the Panamint Mountains, and probably not too far from Stovepipe Wells, since that's where Jack had originally planned to camp on that fateful night in 1897. The Panamint Mountains, however, are vast and riddled with countless canyons. Without more specific information, pinpointing the location of Jack's discovery is a daunting task. The friend who shared this story admitted that he hadn't searched for the canyon himself, being more interested in crystals and polishing rocks. However, he was certain that Jack Stewart had told him the truth. He had been able to verify other stories Jack had told, finding them accurate in every detail. Jack Stewart's story is more than just a tale of a lost gold ledge. It's a window into the life of a Death Valley prospector during a pivotal time in the region's history. Jack's life spanned the transition from the wild, unexplored frontier of the late 19th century to the more settled but still rugged Death Valley of the mid-20th century. His story reminds us of the hardships faced by these early prospectors. They battled not just the harsh desert environment, but also the limitations of transportation and technology of their time. Jack's decision not to file claims on many of the mineral deposits he found was largely due to the difficulty and expense of transporting ore through the desert in those days. The story of the Lost Ledge itself is a classic example of the lost mine tales that are so prevalent in the lore of the American West. These stories capture our imagination, hinting at untold riches just waiting to be rediscovered. They speak to the human desire for adventure and the promise of sudden wealth. But perhaps the most valuable legacy Jack Stewart left behind was his deep knowledge and understanding of the Death Valley region. He was more than just a prospector. He was a keen observer of the desert, its geology, its ecosystems, and its history. His ability to read the landscape and remember locations decades later speaks to a profound connection with the land that few today can match. Jack Stewart's story is a reminder of the unique individuals who shaped the history of places like Death Valley. These were men and women of remarkable resilience, knowledge, and character. They faced unimaginable hardships in their quest for riches, but along the way, many of them, like Jack, developed a deep and abiding love for the desert landscape. As we ponder the mystery of Jack Stewart's Lost Ledge, perhaps we can take a moment to appreciate the real treasure he left behind, a lifetime of knowledge about one of America's most fascinating and challenging landscapes. And who knows? Perhaps someday, a hiker or a modern-day prospector might stumble upon a quartz outcropping shot through with gold in a remote Panamint canyon. If they do, they may well have Jack Stewart to thank for one last gift to the annals of Death Valley lore. This has been the Southwest Desert. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Death Valley's mining history. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and always be ready for the unexpected. The desert, like Jack Stewart's memory, holds many secrets yet to be revealed. Welcome to another episode of the Southwest Desert. Today, we're delving into the intriguing tale of Black Butte and its legendary golden treasure. This story has captivated prospectors and adventure seekers for over a century, with its promise of riches and its enigmatic nature. So sit back, relax, and let's journey into the heart of the California desert to uncover the secrets of Black Butte. Our story begins in the early 1900s, in the harsh and unforgiving landscape of Imperial County, California. Southeast of a place called Midway Wells, in an area known as the Little Chocolate Mountains, there stands a geological oddity that has become the stuff of legend. Black Butte, as it came to be known, is said to be a massive formation visible for miles around. But here's where things get strange. This butte is reported to appear and disappear before the very eyes of those who seek it. The origins of the Black Butte legend can be traced back to 1906. It was a time of rapid expansion in the American West, with railroads pushing ever further into previously unexplored territories. Our story starts at a railroad camp, situated near where the town of Glamis now stands. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, a Native American woman stumbled into the camp. She was in dire straits, carrying a heavy pack and clearly suffering from severe dehydration. The railroad workers, taking pity on the woman, directed her to their water barrel. But tragedy struck. The water in the barrel was ice cold, and the sudden shock to her system proved fatal. The Native American woman collapsed and died shortly after drinking, leaving behind her mysterious burden, a collection of what appeared to be nothing more than dirty black rocks. In the aftermath of this sad event, the workers didn't think much of the woman's cargo. Some of the black rocks were tossed aside while the rest were buried along with her body. Little did they know that these unremarkable-looking stones held a secret that would spark a gold rush and create a lasting mystery. It wasn't until a month or two later that the true nature of these rocks was discovered. A railroad surveyor, perhaps bored one evening, idly scraped at one of the discarded black rocks. To his amazement, he noticed a yellow streak appear beneath the dark surface. Intrigued, he continued scraping, and as the black coating fell away, his eyes widened in disbelief. There, in his hand, was a gold nugget. News of this discovery spread like wildfire. The surveyor, realizing the potential wealth at his fingertips, desperately tried to recover all of the black rocks. But it was too late. The secret was out. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Railroad workers abandoned their posts en masse, leaving the construction project temporarily halted. Everyone who heard the tale was gripped by gold fever, scrambling to secure supplies and head out into the desert. Their goal? To retrace the steps of the ill-fated Native American woman and locate the source of these golden nuggets disguised as black rocks. But the desert is an unforgiving place, especially for those unprepared for its challenges. Of the many who ventured out, seeking their fortune, a shocking number never returned. Those few who did make it back came empty-handed, with no sign of the elusive black rocks or their source. As often happens with such tales, interest in the black rocks eventually waned. Years passed, and the story faded into the background, becoming just another whispered legend in the saloons and camps of the frontier. But like all good legends, it was destined to resurface. One day, an old prospector walked into Yuma, Arizona, carrying samples of the fabled black gold. His arrival reignited the fervor that had gripped the region years before. The entire town was thrown into a frenzy of excitement. As the day wore on and the liquor flowed freely, the old prospector's tongue loosened. While he wouldn't reveal the exact location of his find, he did let slip one crucial detail. The gold came from a black butte that's so big that you can see it from miles around. Unfortunately, like many characters in tales of lost treasure, the old prospector's story came to an abrupt and mysterious end. He died later that night, taking the secret of the Black Butte's location with him to the grave. His tantalizing clue, however, was enough to send a new wave of prospectors into the hills. But once again, their efforts proved fruitless. The massive Black Butte remained hidden, and interest in the legend once more began to fade. Our story might have ended there, consigned to the annals of frontier mythology, if not for a chance encounter just as the First World War was drawing to a close. Enter Mr. Hand, an Eastern capitalist who had come to Imperial Valley in search of better health. During the war, he had served as a director of manganese production, a role that had taken a severe toll on his well-being. Mr. Hand's path crossed with certain gentlemen during a goose hunting expedition. Impressed by the hunting skills on display, Mr. Hand invited the group to dinner. As often happens when strangers gather in the West, talk eventually turned to tales of lost mines and hidden treasures. It was then that the story of the black gold was shared with Mr. Hand. This is where the tale takes an interesting turn. Mr. Hand, with his extensive knowledge of manganese, had a theory. He believed that the black coating on the gold nuggets might actually be manganese. If this were true, it could mean an even greater fortune than gold alone. Excited by the possibility, Mr. Hand engaged the men to hunt for the legendary Black Butte. And so, a new expedition was launched. The search party made camp at Midway Wells and set out at dawn the next day. Fate, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Just as they were getting started, they suffered a setback, a flat tire. It was during this delay, as that one of the men went to take a drink from the canteen, that the impossible happened. There, right before his eyes, stood the Black Butte. In a moment of shock, he dropped the canteen and called for his companions. All three men stood in awe, staring at the massive formation that had appeared as if by magic on the desert landscape. Their elation was short-lived, however. In the blink of an eye, the butte vanished, leaving the men to question whether they had really seen it at all. Determined to solve the mystery, the group set off in the direction where they had seen the butte appear. Their journey led them to a wide, deep wash. Leaving their vehicle behind, they proceeded on foot. As they emerged from the wash, they were greeted by an astonishing sight. There, towering several hundred feet into the air, was the Black Butte. The men's excitement grew as they approached the butte. The first thing they noticed was evidence of previous human activity, the remains of a large camp. Even more intriguing was the entrance to a mine that had been dug into the side of the butte. Although the mine had partially collapsed, making thorough exploration impossible, what they found inside was remarkable. The mine tunnels were littered with pieces of high-grade manganese ore, some as large as a man's head or even bigger. The quality of the ore was exceptional, so pure that it could be polished to a mirror-like finish with minimal effort. This discovery seemed to confirm Mr. Hand's theory about the nature of the black coating on the gold nuggets. As the men climbed the butte, they made more observations. The lower part of the formation was covered in pure manganese, visible on the surface. The upper portion, while likely composed of the same material, was obscured by a cap of vegetation. This vegetative cover, they theorized, might be responsible for the butte's mysterious ability to disappear at certain times of the day. Despite their thorough exploration, the men found no trace of gold. They initially concluded that previous miners must have exhausted the gold deposits. However, later studies would suggest that this assumption was incorrect. There may still be gold waiting to be discovered within Black Butte. From their vantage point atop the butte, the men made another surprising discovery. Looking out over the desert, they spotted wagon tracks leading from the abandoned camp towards the Colorado River. This river, at the time, marked the boundary between the United States and Mexico. This observation led to an intriguing theory. During World War I, the United States had been importing manganese from an unspecified location in Mexico. They speculated that this mine might have been the source of that manganese. They theorized that Mexican operators had been working the mine and selling the manganese back to the U.S. as a Mexican product. After collecting samples and carefully noting the butte's position, the group returned to town, their minds racing with the possibilities their discovery presented. Mr. Hand, upon examining their finds, declared it to be the finest manganese he had ever seen. Excited by the potential, he proposed a celebration dinner during which he planned to draw up a contract that would make them all wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. In his enthusiasm, Mr. Hand insisted on joining the men on their next goose hunting expedition. This decision would prove fateful, not just for Mr. Hand, but for the future of Black Butte as well. The harsh conditions of the hunt, the cold and the wet, proved too much for Mr. Hand's already fragile health. He contracted double pneumonia and, tragically, passed away less than 2 weeks later. With Mr. Hand's death, the plans for exploiting the manganese deposits of Black Butte fell apart. His friends found themselves without financial backing or a clear path forward. They came to realize that they were among a very select group. Only 9 or 10 people were known to have ever laid eyes on the elusive butte. Interestingly, despite their incredible discovery, none of the men ever returned to Black Butte. The reasons for this are not entirely clear. Perhaps the memory of Mr. Hand's untimely death cast a shadow over the venture, or maybe the challenges of accessing and developing such a remote location seemed too daunting without significant financial resources. As for the legendary gold that started this whole saga, it seems that apart from the Native American woman and the old prospector, no one else ever found it. The story of Black Butte didn't end with that expedition, however. Word of its existence and potential mineral wealth eventually reached government ears. In the 1940s, it was rumored that the government was likely organizing a search for the butte. Whether such a search ever took place and what it might have found remains a mystery. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Black Butte legend is its apparent ability to appear and disappear. Even today, people continue to search for this enigmatic formation, but it seems that the butte reveals itself only under specific conditions. According to rumor, one of the best times to spot Black Butte is early in the morning. This detail adds an almost mystical quality to the legend, suggesting that even with modern technology and mapping techniques, Black Butte might still guard its secrets. As we conclude our exploration of the Black Butte legend, we're left with more questions than answers. Does the butte still stand somewhere in the California desert, waiting to be rediscovered? Are there still gold nuggets encased in their manganese shells, scattered across its slopes? Will someone someday solve the mystery of its appearing and disappearing act? Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Southwest Desert. Today, we're diving into the fascinating legend of Pegleg Smith's gold mine, a tale that has captivated treasure hunters and history buffs for over 170 years. Sit back and prepare to be transported to the scorching deserts of the American Southwest, where fortunes were made and lost, and where one of the most enduring mysteries of the region was born. Our story begins in the year 1852, when a man named John O. Smith, better known as Pegleg Smith, made a discovery that would spark decades of speculation and adventure. Pegleg Smith was no stranger to the harsh landscapes of the Southwest. As a seasoned horse trader and guide, he had traversed these lands many times before. But on this particular journey from Yuma to Los Angeles, via Warner's Ranch, Smith decided to take a shortcut across the desert, a decision that would change his life forever. As Smith made his way through the desolate terrain, he came upon 3 hills that caught his attention. Intrigued, he decided to climb one of them. What he found at the top would become the stuff of legend. Scattered across the hilltop were numerous black lumps of metal. Smith, assuming they were copper, picked up a few as curiosities to add to his collection. It wasn't until Smith arrived in Los Angeles and showed his finds to a mining friend that the true nature of his discovery was revealed. These weren't mere lumps of copper. They were pure gold nuggets, coated with a layer of desert varnish that gave them their distinctive black appearance. In an instant, Pegleg Smith realized he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. News of Smith's discovery spread like wildfire through Los Angeles. Sensing the opportunity of a lifetime, Smith quickly made his way to San Bernardino, where he gathered supplies and a small group of trusted companions for an expedition back to the site of his discovery. Under the cover of darkness, Smith and his party set out, their hearts filled with dreams of unimaginable wealth. But the desert is an unforgiving place, and dreams of riches can quickly turn to nightmares. The expedition never returned. Sometime later, the remains of Smith and his companions were discovered on the edge of the Salton Basin. The promise of gold had led them to their doom, and Pegleg Smith was never heard from again. The legend of Pegleg Smith's gold might have ended there, lost to the sands of time like so many other frontier tales. But fate had other plans. A few years after Smith's ill-fated expedition, a discharged soldier from Fort Yuma found himself traversing a similar route across the desert. By chance or destiny, he too climbed one of the three hills and made the same astounding discovery: black nuggets of gold scattered across the hilltop. Unlike Smith, this soldier recognized the nuggets for what they were. He gathered as much as he could carry and made his way to Los Angeles. But the lure of easy riches proved too strong to resist. Like Smith before him, the soldier returned to the desert with two companions, determined to claim the rest of the gold. History, it seems, has a way of repeating itself. The three men were never seen alive again. Their bodies were later found in the foothills of the San Isidro Mountains about 30 miles west of the Salton Sea. For nearly 2 decades, the legend of the burned black gold of the Pegleg lay dormant, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires. But in 1876, as the Southern Pacific Railroad Company pushed its way across the desert, the story resurfaced in a most unexpected way. One day, at a railroad construction camp near Salton, a Native American woman stumbled in, on the verge of death from dehydration. After being revived, she shared a harrowing tale. She and her husband had been traveling from the reservation at the head of the Rio San Luis Rey to the Cocopa Reservation near Yuma. Their journey took a tragic turn when their canteen leaked and her husband succumbed to thirst. For 2 days, the woman wandered alone in search of water. In her desperation, she climbed one of the Tres Picachos, 3 peaks, and from there spotted the smoke from the construction train. But that wasn't all she found on that hill. The woman produced a bandana filled with black nuggets, giving one to the engineer in charge of the camp before continuing on her journey. She was never seen again, but her brief appearance added another layer to the growing legend of Pegleg's gold. The fourth and final confirmed discovery of the black gold came a few years later, this time by a half-breed worker from Warner's Ranch. This man appeared one day after a trip to the desert, carrying a quantity of black nuggets. He exchanged them for coins and, when his funds ran low, would disappear into the desert only to return with more gold. The half-breed was clever, covering his tracks well to keep the source of his newfound wealth a secret. On one or more of these trips, he took his wife, Carmelita, with him. The man's luck eventually ran out, but not because of the desert. He was killed in a brawl and more than $4,000 in coarse gold was found in his bunk. When questioned about the gold's location, Carmelita offered a tantalizing clue. "We left early in the morning, camped at the spring of the White Ledge, and when the sun was so high, pointing to the sky, we would be where the gold was." Despite this information, subsequent searchers were unable to locate either the spring or the gold. The legend of Pegleg's gold took another dark turn with the involvement of Tom Cover, a former sheriff of Riverside County. Cover had encountered the half-breed during one of his desert trips while hunting for horse thieves. Intrigued by the story, Cover and a friend named Russell decided to venture into the desert themselves. At the place where they had previously seen the half-breed, Cover and Russell separated. Russell was to drive their team to an appointed meeting place, while Cover continued on foot. It was the last time anyone would see Tom Cover alive. Russell returned to Riverside alone, and despite Mrs. Cover offering a $5,000 reward for the recovery of her husband's body, no trace of him was ever found. In 1902, a man named Walter E. Scott interviewed both Mrs. Cover and Russell in Riverside. Russell revealed that when he and Cover parted ways, the sheriff had a nugget of gold from the Pegleg mine and a map of its location. The circumstances of Cover's disappearance remain a mystery to this day, adding another layer of intrigue to the Pegleg legend. Over the years, countless treasure hunters have ventured into the desert in search of Pegleg Smith's legendary gold. The exact number of lives lost in pursuit of this elusive treasure will never be known, but according to reports gathered over nearly 5 decades, the toll is substantial. The search for the Pegleg mine is fraught with danger. Water is scarce in the region, and the terrain is so rugged that travel is nearly impossible without a sure-footed animal. Yet despite these perils, the allure of the black gold continues to draw adventurers into the unforgiving desert. The legend of Pegleg Smith's gold mine has endured for nearly 2 centuries, capturing the imagination of generations of treasure hunters and history enthusiasts. Unlike many lost bonanza tales, the story of the Pegleg mine is supported by recurring evidence that has come to light over the years. Some even claim that gold from the mine has been coined into U.S. currency, lending further credibility to the legend. The story of Pegleg's gold embodies the spirit of the American West, a tale of adventure, risk, and the promise of untold riches waiting to be discovered. It speaks to the human desire for sudden wealth and the lengths to which people will go in pursuit of their dreams. But the legend also serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers that lurk in the harsh desert landscape and the high price that many have paid in their quest for gold. It's a story of hope and tragedy, of triumph and disappearance, all set against the backdrop of one of America's most unforgiving environments. The Pegleg mine remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the American Southwest, a tantalizing secret hidden somewhere in the vast expanse of the desert. For now, the black nuggets of Pegleg Smith's mine remain elusive, their location known only to the desert itself. But who knows? Perhaps someday, a lucky explorer will stumble upon those 3 hills and finally unravel the mystery that has captivated us for so long. Until then, the legend lives on, a testament to the enduring allure of hidden treasures and the indomitable spirit of those who seek them. Welcome, treasure hunters and history buffs, to another exciting episode of Southwest Desert. Today, we're diving into the mysterious world of lost gold in the Santa Rosa Mountains of Southern California. Get ready for a journey through time as we explore tales of hidden pockets of gold that have captivated prospectors for over a century. Our story begins with Henry Wilson, a man who had dedicated nearly half a century to searching for gold in the Borrego Desert. But what drives a person to spend 50 years looking for something that might not even exist? Well, dear listeners, by the end of this episode, you might just understand why. The Santa Rosa mountain range, lying north of Borrego Springs, has long been a source of fascination for treasure seekers. While many are familiar with the legend of Pegleg Smith's black gold nuggets, found atop one of 3 hills, our tale today focuses on something different: gold pockets. Now, before we dive in, let's be clear. The stories we're about to share come from old-timers and desert wanderers. Like the shimmering mirages that dance across the desert landscape, these stories are the possibility, however slim, that somewhere out there, a fortune in gold lies waiting to be discovered. Let's transport ourselves back to the early 1900s. Picture a lone prospector named Nicholas Schwartz, trudging through the rugged terrain of the Santa Rosa Mountains. Schwartz had been a fixture in these parts for years, so much so that a canyon on the south slope of the range bears his name, Old Nicholas Canyon. In 1903, 2 men, John Collins and a friend, ventured down Rockhouse Canyon. There, they stumbled upon a stone cabin, a one-room shelter with a good roof, a door, a window, and even a fireplace. Little did they know at the time, but this humble abode was believed to be the home of Old Man Nicholas himself. Now here's where our tale takes a golden turn. Legend has it that one fateful day, Schwartz picked up a gold nugget just lying there on the ground. But instead of celebrating his find and moving on, Nicholas did something curious. He started digging, right there, under where the nugget had been resting. And what do you think he found? A pocket of gold so rich that by the time he finished, he had extracted $18,000 worth of the precious metal. That's over $500,000 in today's money. Schwartz didn't take it all. In fact, he claimed he left more gold in the hole than he took out. Why? Well, according to the story, he didn't want the responsibility of having that much money. Can you imagine finding a fortune and leaving it behind? Before leaving the area, Schwartz supposedly buried his pick and shovel atop the covered hole, a marker for a treasure he chose to leave behind. He then headed off to Chicago, where he lived out the rest of his days. But the story doesn't end there. It's just getting started. You see, before he passed away, Schwartz allegedly created a map marking the spot of his glory hole with an X. This map would go on to fuel the dreams and adventures of many a treasure hunter in the years to come. Fast forward to 1933. A man we'll call Jack Carter spent 2 months in the area, searching for the legendary Pegleg gold. During his time there, he met a fellow named Pomeroy who claimed to have Schwartz's map tucked away in a Los Angeles bank safety deposit box. Pomeroy and Carter struck a deal, a 50-50 split if they could find the gold together. But like many treasure hunting partnerships, this one was doomed from the start. Pomeroy showed up to their meeting without the map, staked a claim in the wrong spot, and failed to reimburse Carter for expenses. In the end, Carter took matters into his own hands, enlisting friends to file a claim on the area he believed held the pocket of gold. But here's the twist. Carter didn't know the exact spot either. He was hoping to use a metal detector to find Schwartz's buried pick and shovel. Sadly, Carter passed away before he could complete his search, leaving the mystery of the Schwartz pocket unsolved to this day. But wait, there's more. The Santa Rosa Mountains seem to be a veritable honeycomb of hidden gold pockets. Let's shift our focus to another tantalizing tale, the story of the Buckley, or Butler, mine on Coyote Mountain. In 1904, a man named Butler stumbled down from the mountain, sick and desperate to reach a hospital in San Bernardino. At Clark Well, he encountered Fred Clark, who was tending cattle. Unable to leave his post, Clark couldn't help Butler directly. But as luck would have it, a couple of young men from San Diego arrived in what was described as the first automobile to enter Borrego Valley. Butler, sensing his time was short, made the young men an offer they couldn't refuse. In exchange for a ride to the hospital, he would give them a map to his mine on the mountain. If he didn't make it back, the mine would be theirs. True to his word, Butler handed over the map before passing away in the hospital. The young men returned to the mountain, map in hand, but despite their efforts, they couldn't locate the mine. Years later, other treasure hunters found rocks arranged in the shape of an arrow pointing to a high cliff. But the Butler mine, if it ever existed, remains hidden to this day. Now, you might be wondering, what makes these stories of gold pockets so compelling? Why do they capture our imagination more than tales of traditional mines or placer gold? It's all about the element of surprise and the democratization of treasure hunting. You see, the average prospector typically looks for gold in predictable places, in quartz veins along rock contacts or in placer deposits in dry washes. But gold pockets, they're like nature's lottery tickets scattered randomly across the landscape. An eminent mining engineer once told Jack Carter that while there was plenty of gold in the Borrego country and adjoining mountains, it was all in pockets, no ledges or placer deposits to speak of. This means that anyone, with a bit of luck, could stumble upon a life-changing discovery. Take, for example, the story of Frank, John McCain's cattle herding partner. In 1893, while tracking a missing steer, Frank's eye was caught by some likely-looking dirt. On a whim, he scooped up a bandana full and took it to San Diego for assaying. The result? $5 worth of gold from a simple handkerchief of dirt. Now, $5 might not sound like much, but consider this. Subsequent panning of dirt from the same area yielded nothing. The logical conclusion? Frank had unknowingly scooped up a small gold nugget, another tantalizing hint at the presence of rich gold pockets in the area. But perhaps the most intriguing tale comes from 1878. A former employee of the Waterman mine near Julian spent 6 years searching for the legendary Pegleg gold. His persistence paid off when he discovered 4 gold nuggets, ranging in value from $2.50 to $10 each. The location where these nuggets were found? Remarkably close to where Frank made his lucky scoop years later. It's enough to make you wonder, is there a mother lode of gold just waiting to be discovered in those sun-baked hills? As we wrap up our journey through the gold-flecked history of the Santa Rosa Mountains, it's worth pondering why these stories continue to captivate us. Is it the allure of instant wealth, the romance of the Old West? Or perhaps it's something deeper, a primal urge to uncover secrets and solve mysteries that have puzzled generations before us? Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. The legend of lost gold pockets in the Santa Rosa Mountains isn't going away anytime soon. Who knows? Maybe somewhere out there, Nicholas Schwartz's pick and shovel still lie buried, marking the spot where a fortune in gold awaits discovery. And so, dear listeners, we leave you with this tantalizing thought. The next time you find yourself wandering the rugged terrain of Southern California's desert mountains, keep your eyes peeled. That glint in the sand, that odd-looking rock, it just might be the key to unlocking a century-old secret. This has been Southwest Desert. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to write the next chapter in the ongoing saga of the lost gold of the Santa Rosa Mountains. I hope you enjoyed these lost Southwest tales. For more videos and playlists on the Southwest, check out my large catalog. Happy trails!